Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I think there are no more questions. Dr. Raju?
Yeah, I think there is no more questions. I thank Annie Madam and Silimon Madam for moderating the session. I think we'll move to the next session. And to moderate the session, I invite two vibrant ladies from Kottayam, Dr. Sadi MS. Madam is additional professor of OBG in Kottayam Medical College and member of the National Medical Council Center for Faculty Development, academic committee member of KFOG, and trainer and sound coordinator of EMOCAL. Areas of interest is high-risk obstetrics, gynecology, activist. She's a what do you call, proud dancer, and she's she's our PG while we are doing our internship, and such a great soul. And our ever dynamic Dr. Bindu Sajid Madam, and we all know her charismatic skills when we did the last AKSUG. And Madam is additional professor in OBG Society, and she's the additional professor of OBG at Kottayam Medical College. Over to you, Madam.
Thank you, Raju, for that nice words of introduction. Can I introduce the first speaker?
Hello.
It's my proud privilege to introduce Dr. Mohan S. Kamath, Professor of Reproductive Medicine, CMC Vellore. He completed his MS OBG from AFMC Pune in 2003 and did his DD in 2004. And he had a postdoctoral fellow in reproductive medicine from CMC Vellore in 2008, Combat Fellow in reproductive medicine from University of Aberdeen from UK 2012. And he's an editorial board member for Coherent Fertility and Gynecology, Associate Editor Coherent Clinical Answers, Associate Editor Human Reproduction Asia Journal, Deputy Editor Journal of Human Reproductive Science, Research Gate Scorer. He has got more than 75 publications in various national and international journals, including Human Reproduction, Fertility, Sterility, BGOG, and peer review for indexed international and national journals, including the Lancet and Human Reproduction Update. And he is a faculty for postdoctoral FNB fellowship courses and DM, MCH, Reproductive Medicine and Surgery. I welcome Dr. Mohan S. Kamath to talk on his topic on PCOD ovulation induction protocols with the letrozole. When you're talking about ovulation induction, especially in PCOD patients, you'll have to consider so many major issues like drug resistance, drug failure, ovarian hyperstimulation, and multiple pregnancies. So there is a role of letrozole in such situation, and Sir will elaborate us on more of different protocols of ovulation induction by letrozole. I welcome you, sir, and screen is yours.
I'm just trying to. Okay, am I audible? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, am I audible, Raju? Yeah.
Yes. Please, full screen, please.
Yeah, that icon is gone now. Where is you press Control 5? Is it Control
F5? F5.
F5, no. F5. Yeah. It's become F5. No.
Otherwise, check that slideshow and put slideshow beginning on the top. No, on the right side, slideshow.
After animations, insert design.
Oh man, slideshow.
On the top. Top, on the top only.
Yeah, okay.
From the
beginning. Okay. I think the icon is gone. Okay, sorry for that little bit of a technical glitch. I'm audible. I'm confirming again because audible, it should be okay now. Raju, it's okay, no? Yeah. Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I thank all the team members of Kerala OBGYN Society Thank you, Chairperson, for that introduction. And Raju and Venu, all of my dear friends. So I could not say refuse. So moment he called, I lunged on because it's been a long time since I've come to Kerala. It's been a year, I think so. We've been missing our usual CMEs and conferences. So I thought let's move on and start again. So the topic I have chosen and we agreed on was a very simple topic about the use of letrozole as a first-line ovulation induction agent in PCOS group. And over the next 20 minutes, I'll be covering various aspects of use of letrozole. So mainly, of course, how does letrozole fare up in various subgroups of PCOS women? And this is very important because when you actually looking at studies, we have to be very clear about which group we are talking about. Okay, so it's about treatment naive group, then it's clomiphene failure, clomiphene resistant, then a little bit about the various combinations. And of course, a little bit on a tangent, I will go and talk about use of letrozole in unexplained and IVF as well. A brief overview about how they work. So all of us are now aware clomiphene works as a selective estrogen receptor modulator, and basically it blinds the HPO access to the endogenous E2, whereas letrozole works more on the peripheral site. It's an aromatase inhibitor. We know that it inhibits the production of E2 at the ovarian level, and that's the important point, practical point here is that it actually, the central feedback, negative feedback mechanism is intact. So that's something that we need to remember when we are using these two drugs. So let's look at a very commonly used drug, that's clomiphene. It's available in 50 milligrams and people go up to 200 milligrams. So the practice point here is that ovulation happens approximately for 50% of the ladies with PCOS with 50, whereas it goes up to 72% with 100 milligrams. Though the books do mention 50 milligrams as a starting dose, in our institution, and generally I would recommend to go up to straight away 100 to cut down the superfluous cycles where there won't be any response. And not to be worried about the multiple pregnancy rates if you go up to 100, because there's no evidence to suggest there's an increase in multiple pregnancy, even if you start with a dose of 100 milligrams for clomiphene. Okay, let's come back to letrozole, which is usually used between 2.5 to 7.5 milligrams per day dosage. Now, where does it stand as an ovulation induction agent in treatment naive PCOS women? So this is an important term to be used when we don't have, the couple has just come to you in a primary center or a secondary center, and they have not had any ovulation induction, and you made your diagnosis of PCOS and the semen analysis for the husband is normal. This is different from a group which is called clomiphene failure, where the lady has ovulated, ovulation is documented with clomiphene, but the conception has not occurred. CC resistance, of course, is a very different subgroup of PCOS women. So we need to distinguish these subpopulation of PCOS and when we talk about letrozole's efficiency. Because CC resistance essentially means that the highest dose, it could be 150 or 200 milligrams. There is no ovulation which has been documented. And essentially it represents a more severe form of the disease, and it should worry us because it has ramifications down the lane as well. So let's look at the evidence, and most of the evidence is coming from the Mediterranean region and some studies from India. So it's good for us because these are applicable to our population. So study from Iran, 100 women, treatment naive patient, first line in PCOS, letrozole, when you compare with clomiphene 4 cycles, so they reported a cumulative pregnancy, which was, of course, it's not significantly higher here, 58 versus 47. So these are cumulative pregnancy rates over 4 cycles. There's another Iranian study, which was again in treatment naive patients, 100 women, letrozole, but they reported only a single cycle, 26 versus 14%. Okay. So the trend was towards higher pregnancy rates, but it was not significant. But most will go by this trend and start introducing letrozole on basis of these results itself. Now, there are very few studies which have clearly mentioned that the population was treatment naive. Okay, most of the studies just have an exclusion of no OI in the previous 6 months. Like this is a randomized trial from the UK published in 2017, where they looked at 2.5 milligrams versus 50 milligrams with 6 ovulatory cycles. And here they found a significantly higher cumulative live birth rate of 49% when they compared with clomiphene, and kind of moving towards a clear case for letrozole. But the landmark trial, if you ask me, is from Richard Legros and his group, which was published in NEJM. And this was a multi-center double-blinded trial, 750 women randomized, and they looked at 5 treatment cycles, and the inclusion was PCOS according to a Rotterdam criteria. However, in this trial, it was not clear if they have taken a treatment naive group. Okay, the only exclusion was they had not taken any fertility treatment in the last 3 months. So there could be a mixed population here. Now, what they found was a clear case for letrozole. So after this trial came in, letrozole entered the guidelines for most of the societies, because this was a landmark trial by Richard Legros, and the cumulative live birth, as you can clearly see, was higher with letrozole. Per cycle live birth are a shade lower than what you would expect, 6% versus 4% for clomiphene. Probably it could be because of the ethnicity difference, but then it's a clear case where letrozole is doing better. Now, let's look at one trial which came from our country, which was published in the ISA journal way back in 2012 by Dr. Sujata Kar from Orissa. And it was again in treatment naive group. So they looked only at 1 cycle, and they combined OI with IUI or timed intercourse, and they found a significantly better clinical pregnancy rate of 22% versus 8% with clomiphene. So this is again, this is from India, so probably it's more applicable to our population. Our own data, which we have looked at, because it's not easy now to have a randomized trial with letrozole as the first line, because the drug is almost established now. So we looked at mixed design, non-randomized studies, and we looked at 3 ovulatory cycles, starting from 2.5 milligrams and going up scale up to 7.5 with letrozole. And our cumulative live birth again was on the higher side with letrozole. And this was a treatment naive group. So you can clearly see that it kind of correlates with the earlier studies. But the take home point here was the letrozole 5 milligrams was doing better in terms of ovulation. And this is again a clear case where I would say that we can start looking at a starting dose of 5 milligrams for letrozole instead of going for 2.5. Okay, now what do we do? This is a scenario where we have CC failure. That's there, the woman has received clomiphene, she's ovulated, but she's not conceived. This is a typical group that we see very often in practice, especially earlier days. This was quite common, let's say 5 years back. So this trial from India, published in 2009 in the ASRM journal, it was basically a randomized trial with 3 arms: letrozole versus clomiphene and gonadotropin versus gonadotropin only, along with IUI. Okay. Now, what did they find? That they found that the letrozole is doing quite well. In fact, of course, the difference was not significant, but you can clearly see 24% was the clinical pregnancy rate with this particular single cycle trial. So this is where probably it gives us some clue about use of letrozole in CC failure. Moving on, way back in 2007, we did a trial in CC resistant and clearly established the role of letrozole as a drug of choice because the ovulation rate was higher. 1/3 of the women ovulated with 2.5 in a CC resistant group. Okay. So how does it fare here? So you can see in this particular trial from China, they had recruited CC resistant women, those who did not have ovulation. They compared letrozole HMG combination versus clomiphene HMG versus HMG alone. And they found that the monofollicular response with letrozole combination was higher, but the pregnancy rates were similar. So if you are trying to bring down the multiple pregnancy rates, a letrozole combination is better than a CC-HMG combination. And this is something that will be seen across all the treatment aspects of letrozole, that it encourages a monofollicular development as opposed to clomiphene, which leads to multifollicular development quite often. So this is something that has to be used in clinical practice very judiciously. So this is a novel combination which is now slowly picking up, but there are very few studies which have looked at this. So let's say the study from which was presented in the ASRM conference in 2018. So what have they done? They have used clomiphene 50 milligrams and combined with letrozole versus letrozole alone. The trick is to start both the drugs on the same day, that is day 2 to day 6 of cycle, and monitor and do the usual follicular monitoring. And you can see that ovulation rate was higher with the CC letrozole combination. Though the difference in live birth is not significant, you can say this because the sample size probably is too less. It's 35 versus 35, but this was probably a proof of concept kind of study. It's a pilot study, I would say. There was another novel protocol with use of letrozole. So I would just add that for the CC letrozole combination, we are also doing a trial, and preliminary results do show some evidence of pregnancies coming in, but it's too early for us to say that this combination is better than standalone letrozole or standalone clomiphene. So we are still working on this, and probably in a year's time we will know better. So where does extended letrozole stand? This is a protocol which was published way back in 2008, where they were looking at this very difficult subpopulation of clomiphene resistant PCOS women. As I said, this always points out towards a more severe, more androgenic PCOS group. And here they tried letrozole for 10 days, and they looked at a shorter standard protocol of day 1 to day 5. And they did not find this extended letrozole regimen as a particularly useful one, because you can see the pregnancy per cycle and ovulation rates, there was no real difference. Moving on, where does letrozole stand if you are not looking at PCOS? You're looking at unexplained, which is another very commonly diagnosed entity in our clinical practice. So again, from Richard Legro's group, they did 2 landmark trials. One was in PCOS group and one was in unexplained, to establish the role of letrozole. And whereas there was clear evidence that letrozole was the drug of choice for PCOS women, for unexplained, they did this trial where letrozole was compared with clomiphene and HMG. And what they found out was actually the pregnancy rates were lower with letrozole compared to clomiphene, compared to gonadotropins. And this was attributed to the monofollicular tendencies, development that happens with letrozole. And this is something that we need to look at, because when you're looking at IUI for an unexplained infertility, you are not looking at ovulation induction. You're looking at superovulation. That is, you want to have more than 1 follicle, but not more than 3. It's a very tight rope. And this is where letrozole probably doesn't reach the expectation, because you end up having 1 follicle, then you will not have a very dramatic increase in pregnancy rate. So this is a practice point that we need to remember, that use of letrozole in unexplained is not probably a good idea. And there were concerns about letrozole safety, but there is data across the world and from India as well. So you can see that congenital anomaly rates was, there are no significant difference, be it the natural pregnancy or clomiphene. So it kind of settled this question and apprehension that a lot of people had about use of letrozole, and now it is much commonly used. Of course, Togus Tulandi's group in Canada did settle this way back in 2006, but people were still not getting the approval for usage of letrozole for quite a bit of time. And this pushed the practice towards gonadotropin. That's where. So let's look at the take-home points for this particular talk. So if you have a PCOS woman, a couple diagnosed with ovulatory dysfunction secondary to PCOS, and it's a treatment naive group, then I would clearly say the evidence is strongly in favor of letrozole for all the trials that I've quoted. The practice point here would be to use 5 milligrams instead of 2.5 because you don't really have a dramatic jump in multiple pregnancy rates. So you are cutting down your superfluous treatment. And the other thing to remember is that try to avoid a tubal test for patency before ovulation induction with oral agents. You can reduce the invasiveness of tests because ASRM also does not recommend tubal patency upfront for a diagnosed clear-cut PCOS woman unless there is a clinical indication. So that's something that we can do. And the second thing is in a CC failure group, letrozole can be considered. I would say that if you have people coming with CC failure and they've not had a tubal test, you can still go ahead and do a letrozole induction before moving on to the tubal test and gonadotropin. So this is again a practice point. Of course, it's the first line for CC resistant kiss, which is clearly established, and that's where the letrozole came in. If you ask me, what is your choice if you're looking at a gonadotropin oral ovulation combination in CC failure, I would say you would look at a letrozole HMG combination in this scenario because you want to reduce the multiple follicular response and you want to stick to ovulation induction. So if you are looking at a oral ovulation HMG combination in a CC failure group, stick to letrozole HMG over CC HMG. However, the whole thing is turned the other way when you're looking at unexplained, because a letrozole or a letrozole HMG combination probably is not a good idea because you're going to get a monofollicular response on unexplained infertility when you're looking at a superovulation IUI. Remember, these are very subtle things, but it is very important in clinical practice. And if you ask me, yes, oral ovulations, there's a Cochrane which clearly established that a combination of oral ovulations and gonadotropin gives you as good results as a conventional protocol, but this is for one started cycle only. It's not a cumulative live birth. So remember this. But in poor responders, oral ovulation can be combined with gonadotropins and you can have reasonably good live birth rate compared to conventional in poor responders. But one thing over the years we have learned, and I would like to share again, is when you are looking at an IVF, you are again looking at a multifollicular response. So oral ovulation of choice for us would be clomiphene over letrozole in this group, because you would like to have at least that 1 or 2 extra follicle in an IVF setting, which is not the requirement when you're looking at a simple ovulation induction. I think with that, I will end my talk, and I think we'll have questions later. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kamath, for the excellent talk on letrozole on ovulation induction for PCOS. We'll take the discussions afterwards, after the next talk. Raju, can you please?
Kamath, can you stop sharing your screen?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So PCOS is the most common